Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening and watching Rashkin Report, and I'm your host, Yuri Rashkin. I'm very excited to be here today, joined by the man that Russians turn to find out what is going on with oil and gas industries in Russia, Mikhail Krutikhin. Mikhail, thank you so much for being on a program. Thank you for doing this interview in English. It's an honor to have you, and we have so much to cover. Welcome.
Thanks for the invitation, and let's have a good interview.
Let's have a good interview. Late Senator John McCain called Russia a gas station masquerading as a country. And here we have, here we have a gas station in trouble. But how much in trouble is this gas station that decided to go to war with another country, Ukraine? Can you tell us, I guess the first question first is, are the sanctions working? It seems like the West has done everything it has never done before, mostly seems like, to get Russia to stop, to stop being interested, to get Kremlin, to get Putin, stop interested in this war. How are you seeing this as a specialist in the industry that is basically feeding supplying Russian regime and a lot of Russians with income? How is oil and gas industry doing these days in Russia?
Well, thanks for remembering the words of Senator John McCain. I remember his other words too. At a conference in Washington, I was attending that conference. He also said, well, before doing business with Russia and before making decisions about doing business with Russia, we must understand whom we are dealing with. And at that time, yes, it was a very sensible approach, because later the United States and Russia signed a new agreement on strategic armaments. And yes, the senator was in favor of that agreement. And I think it was a very pragmatic attitude. But now we see something, a new face of the Russian administration and the Russian government. Very few people at that time, it was, several years ago, believed that Russia would launch such a war against a neighboring country. It was even before the Russian-Georgian war of 2008. And later, at 2014, when Russia grabbed the Crimean Peninsula and announced it was part of Russia, I think everything became absolutely clear. It was only the matter of time for Russia to launch a new offensive against other countries. And one of the weapons in that offensive was something that Russia possesses, and something which the buyers of Russian oil, gas, and coal cannot do without. Some European countries are critically dependent on Russian gas supply, and this is why it is one of the possible sanctions that has not been put in effect so far. And while we are expecting the beginning of the sanctions in December against buying Russian oil in Europe, and the sanctions against Russian coal have already begun, but about gas, that's not a very easy situation, because we see that some European countries and many European countries are dependent on Russian gas supply. And it's a paradoxical situation. Russian gas goes to Europe across Ukraine, while Russia is at war in Ukraine. It is a theater of war, and gas pipelines are operating at, as if nothing has happened. And now we see two conflicting tendencies. One tendency is for Russia to use the supply of natural gas as a political weapon, as a means of political blackmail, because the Russians apparently believe that they can make the Europeans change their minds lift some of the sanctions and maybe stop support in Ukraine if they, theoretically freeze during the winter. And, the other tendency is for Russia to avoid punishment for for non-delivering the amount of gas that Gazprom has subscribed to, and in the contracts of Gazprom with European customers, it says that if Gazprom is unable to deliver, Gazprom will pay a very big penalty. It is billions of dollars or euros. It is not millions. And to avoid that, Gazprom is now inventing, pretexts for not paying. They are inventing something which is called force majeure, circumstances of unsurmountable difficulty. And Gazprom has decreased the supply via one of the pipelines, Nord Stream, saying that the gas turbines that pump gas across the Baltic Sea are not capable to do that because they need repairs, and one of the turbines is missing. It was under repairs in Canada, but now it is in Germany. I don't think this is a valid explanation because Gazprom could have taken such turbines from a compressor station across the Gulf of Finland. It is not working because the new pipeline, Nord Stream 2, has been suspended because of the Western sanctions, and the gas turbines at the compressor stations can be taken out and delivered to replace the ailing compressor, allegedly ailing compressor at the Nord Stream 1 project. Then Gazprom decreased the delivery of gas across Ukraine. And now, to avoid punishment, it is even resorting to some sort of a sabotage. On the 26th of July, Gazprom suddenly increased the pressure in the pipelines on the border with the Ukraine, expecting that some of the old pipelines in Ukraine would just be damaged. And then Gazprom would have a pretext saying, well, take a look, the gas pipes in Ukraine are not capable to deliver the gas to Europe, and we are not going to pay any penalty for that. Luckily, the Ukrainians managed to survive and to repair the pipelines in time. I think Gazprom is going to repeat such experiments in the future because blackmail is blackmail. It's a political weapon, and now it has become a military weapon of Gazprom. There is a very big problem right now. Well, Gazprom is getting more money for its gas, while the volume of gas is decreasing, the volume of supply. But the price of gas went up to, unbelievably high gas price. It's almost $2,500 per 1,000 cubic meters of Russian gas delivered to Europe. And so Gazprom is not losing very much money. It is losing in volume. It is losing the marketing niches. But still, Europe is unable to drop Gazprom as a supplier. It will be possible maybe 5 years ahead, but not immediately. And so we are expecting a very difficult time for the Europeans as recipients of Russian natural gas. But I believe that the Europeans are prepared to resist and to take all the necessary steps to survive during the winter. I think the winner will be Europe, but not Gazprom in this confrontation.
However, the difference between oil and gas is that oil plays a much bigger part in Russian finances than gas, correct?
Yes. Usually when we compare oil and gas in the revenues of the federal budget, It is all the oil and gas revenues can be split into 20% revenues from gas and 80% revenues from oil. Yes, the prices of oil went up. Now the proportion is changing somewhat, but everybody expects December. In the late December, Europe is going to stop buying Russian oil at all. And it will be a very difficult time for Russia because we have calculated that the exports of Russian crude oil are going to lose about 51%. I include not only the European Union. They have several exceptions from that sanctions regime, but I also include the deliveries to the United States and to other countries, to the United Kingdom. They stopped buying Russian oil early. And in March, Europe is going to stop buying refined products from Russia, diesel oil and naphtha and fuel oil. And it will be even a heavier blow on Russia. Russia is going to lose 57% of its exports of refined products. And if we combine the losses of the Russian oil industry and see what the producing sector of this industry is what they are going to lose, it is about 56%. So the volume of oil Russia will be producing next year is going to be less than half of what Russia is producing right now.
So then if the price of oil goes high, but the volume of oil being produced and purchased go down, then Kremlin regime would have less money to work with to finance its war ultimately, correct?
Yes, that's correct, but we have to consider some other issues. First, the price of oil. I do not expect the price of oil to go dramatically high because after December, when Russia stops delivering to Europe, because just 2 weeks ago, the CEO of the Kuwaiti petroleum company said, well, the price of oil right now includes a war premium of about $30 per barrel. This is the price of the expectations of what Russia is going to do to stop delivery of oil to Europe. So I think that the price already includes those expectations. This is the first issue. And second, Russia is not going to lose very much with non-European and non-American customers, because it is going to continue supplying oil to China. There are long-term contracts between the Russian companies and Chinese, and the pipelines that go from Russia to China. One is going to the Pacific coast, and in the middle of that route, there is a cross point across the Chinese border as well. And another pipeline goes from Russia to Kazakhstan and from Kazakhstan across the Chinese border. And the capacity of those pipelines plus possible capacity of railways and seaports is not higher than 80 million tons a year. That's about 1.25, 1.3 million barrels per day. So the capacity of delivery to China is limited, but the problem is that a very large amount of that oil that goes to China is delivered free of charge. It's not a joke, because the Chinese have already paid for that oil when they provided Russia's state-controlled company, Rosneft, and the pipeline company, Transneft, with loans of about $25 billion. And now, well, they have already spent that money, and they have to deliver oil to pay for that credit and that loan. And well, the flow of oil is going to China is going to continue, but it is no replacement for the sales of oil to European and American customers.
At the same time, we're watching emerging markets continue to look very seriously and buy Russian oil, including Prime Minister, I think, of Indonesia, who said that he has a moral obligation to his citizens to negotiate the best price for them. And to me, that says that, you know, there's a war premium, but there's also a reputation premium. And in some countries, reputation of dealing with a nation that is at war, at a brutal war, possibly with genocide. You know, when we're discussing whether Russia should be declared as a state sponsor of terrorism, those are, you know, reasons not to do business with a country. But for emerging markets, maybe there's other priorities. Can that save the gas station from going out of business?
You just, immediately after the future sanctions were announced, Russia increased deliveries of crude oil to India, for example. Yes, and the Indians were quite happy because the discount on the Russian oil was about $30 per barrel, and it was good competition with the oil that the Indians received from Iraq, first of all, then Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. But later in July, we saw that the amount of oil that Indian companies were buying started decreasing. First, there is competition with traditional suppliers from the Persian Gulf. And then there is a problem with delivery of that oil. First, just imagine you have an oil in Russia. You want to send it to India. You have to load some tankers on the Baltic coast. And in the Baltic, the Russian terminals that load oil into tankers, they cannot they cannot accommodate ocean-going tankers, very large tankers. So they have to load oil into small boats, and they go, through all the Baltic Sea and then through the Danish Straits to about Rotterdam, where they transfer that oil into large tankers, and then those large tankers have to go around Europe, Mediterranean, and the Suez Canal, and then into India. The costs of such transportation are tremendous. And the short transportation leg of Saudi Arabia and Iraq will beat Russian oil on all counts. And so I do not expect that India is going to replace the European market of Russian crude oil, and especially refined products. Yes, even Saudi Arabia is now buying Russian fuel oil for its power stations. Paradoxically, some of Saudi power stations still generate electricity with the help of oil products and not natural gas or anything else. Yes, they have plans to switch to green energy, but now they buy cheap Russian fuel oil, and they prefer to export their own oil as a crude product to traditional consumers.
Biden administration, Democratic lawmakers passed Inflation Reduction Act that is going to includes biggest investments in green energy, and we talk about it in terms of helping the United States transition towards more green energy. Is this a threat to Russia? Is this something that is also helping national security of the United States? How do you see those kinds of legislative efforts affect, free market of oil and gas and Russia?
I'm enthusiastic about this legislation because it points to the right direction, where the world is going to that direction. And I think all the technologically developed countries in the world are determined to build a new type of energy sector, a new type of economy. As to Russia, In the year 2019, President Putin signed a document which was called, which still is called the uh, energy doctrine of the Russian Federation, energy security doctrine of the Russian Federation. And it's based on the assumption that Russia will continue to be the exporter of fuel energy, natural gas, oil, coal, and the trends, the tendency of decarbonization or building green energy in other countries is considered in that document as either threat or challenge or risk to Russia. It is not the development which should be well followed by the Russian industry and Russian economy. And I suspect that when the dust of this war settles and Russia may possibly try to get included, to get integrated into the global economy again, it will be too late, because the world is going to go along the way towards dropping fossil fuels and focusing on something absolutely new. It's hydrogen, it's wind, it's solar energy, and even more. Several years ago, I attended a conference in Qatar, and it was a very interesting topic discussed there. They discussed the ways to switch from resource-based economy to a knowledge-based economy, because it's the new word for the global economies. And it was a paradox. It was in Qatar, which has tremendous reserves of natural gas, is basing its prosperity on exporting natural gas. So speaking about a new type of the world, which would be based on knowledge, but not on exploitation of natural resources, I think it's tempting.
So it seems then that conversations and attempts at having conversations with Russia that Biden administration has undertaken, that I think Obama administration tried to undertake, of trying to find common ground on the issue of protecting the environment, since we all live on the same planet and Russians should also care about this as much as Americans. You're saying, wait, hold on a minute, because Russia officially looks at green energies as a threat. So is that really not an area of possible cooperation?
Well, if you look at the amount of energy that Russia produces from green sources, wind, solar, with the exception of nuclear and hydro energy, you would see that it is 0.007%. Well,
that's a lot of zeros in the wrong direction.
Yes. After the point, it is the third place. It is 7 thousandths of percent. This is the actual generation of electricity with the help of green energy in Russia. While Russia is suggesting that maybe this amount is going to become 4% by the year 2030. This is the official target of the. Well, this is still too little.
So that means that they're not really interested in going in that direction. Kind of the numbers speak for themselves. Am I correct?
Yes. Basically, it is, well, you can call it addiction to oil and gas. Some people call it, well, we in Russia, we are addicts. We cannot leave the oil needle. Yes, it resembles the situation. And when the Russian government sometimes officially says, yes, we are going to drop our dependence on oil and gas and develop something else, we were trying to find what something else means. In the just 4 years ago, there was a very good research made by independent experts in Russia that was called the Energy School, the Energy Center of the Business School at Skolkovo Science Center. And they prepared an outlook for the global energy till 2040, and the global look for and the outlook for Russian energy sector till 2040. They were very pessimistic about the developments in Russia. And when I asked some of those guys, well, have you looked into replacement of oil and gas in the future for Russia, which is an exportable commodity that Russia can actually base its progress on? They said yes. For 2 months, they were looking for replacements. They found nothing. So,
And
well, if you can find anything, please tell me what Russia can export apart from its natural resources.
natural resources is the key word, because I was going to say that Russia seems to be doing quite well. It was doing exporting its people too, as far as like women, children, but those are all natural resources too, I think, in some extent. Let me ask you this. So when you're saying addiction, it is an interesting topic, because it sounds like Russia is kind of hooked on its own supply, because other countries that have done very well selling their natural resources have been, some of them, Qatar is interested in other technologies. Norway, that you're, joining us from right now. I'm glad you're not in Russia. Norway is a huge supplier of oil, and yet their own cars over there are mostly electric. Russia, on the other hand, is hooked on its own supply.
Yes, exactly. And I think there is a danger that some Russians understand for Russia to become, a supplier of natural resources to such neighbors as China, without developing anything that China is going to buy from Russia, some high-tech technologies and machinery. Yes, in the 1950s, it was the other way around. Russia exported machinery to China and received, silk clothes and, some tableware, I remember, even sneakers. And yes, everybody was happy about that, but now it's the other way around. All the exports from China to Russia are not all, but mostly 80% of Chinese exports are machinery and high-end technologies. And from Russia, it is oil, coal, gas, wood, timber, diamonds, metal. It's the primitive metal, not high quality steel. It's still pig iron or something like that. Well, China is just exploiting the natural resources of Russia instead of buying any new technologies. If you see the price of the overall price of high-tech exports in Russia, it is lower than the exports of high-tech from the Czech Republic, for example.
But there's also a real disconnect between the money going into Russia and then that money reaching, let's say average Russians, because there's oligarchs, there's corruption, there's Moscow that sucks in all the resources for the rest of the country. What effect will it have on Russia if its production decreases by 50%? Will oligarchs eat less caviar?
Yes, maybe some of the oligarchs would suffer. Yes, they would lose a couple of $1 billion or something like that. But for example, just take a small settlement in Western Siberia. 30,000 people live there. They service oil production site, which produces 3 million tons of oil per year. Okay, if the production site closes down, what those people are going to do? So it will be unemployment, first of all. It will be the cut of revenues from such things as taxes on personnel of oil companies and companies that service the oil industry. It will be not only unemployment. Some of the companies will have to close down, such as refineries, oil refineries. Some of them produce only poor quality, low-grade products, such as naphtha or primitive diesel oil or fuel oil. And the Russian market does not need those quantities of those low-grade products. And so the plants will have to be closed down. And I think that the losses are going to be tremendous, absolutely.
You're listening and watching Rashkin Report, and our guest today is one of the leading energy specialists in Russia, Mikhail Krutikhin. Mikhail is the person that Russians turn to when they want to know what's going on with their own oil and gas industry, and I'm very excited to have Mikhail with us today. Mikhail, what about the price caps idea that the Biden administration right now is very aggressively pushing, trying to somehow contain the amount of money that Kremlin gets for its oil, gas, oil exports? How do you see those kinds of that's not really free market. That's, strong hand of government versus invisible hand of free market. Do those efforts have a chance of impacting the amount of money that Kremlin gets and to spend on its war in Ukraine?
Maybe it's not a popular view, but I suspect that this is, just rhetorical statements without any foundation, because first, Russia is selling its oil at a great discount of about $30 per barrel. And to establish some sort of a cap over this price or under this price, I'm not sure it is going to work. Then the proposal comes from the United States and generally from the Great Seven, G7 nations. And what about the rest of the world? Are they going to follow suit? There are different plans how to enforce this rule. One of the proposals is to stop providing insurance for oil shipments from Russia if oil is traded at a price higher than this ceiling, artificial ceiling. I'm not sure how are you going to administer that restriction and to enforce that. I don't think it is going to work. All the countries, almost all the countries that are in favor of such a proposal have already stopped or are going to stop in December and March buying Russian oil. The rest of the world is not joining those proposals, and it does not seem practical to me.
We had a question from a listener here saying, in recent past, Russian energy companies had LLCs in Holland, Denmark. What is deal now? Do they still have management offices and financial ties? And is that a way to go around some sanctions or embargoes or anything like that?
Yes, some of the companies still exist abroad with their branches and subsidiaries. Some of the companies, it's an absolutely new reality in Austria and in Germany, have been taken over by the governments of those countries because they belong to Gazprom and served to Gazprom as a political weapon. For example, there was a company, Gazprom Germania, which commanded the underground storage facilities which Gazprom owned in Germany. And last winter, when there was a crisis of gas deliveries to Europe, Gazprom stopped delivering gas to those underground storage facilities, breaking the tradition of the previous years, and helped the prices of gas to go up and the crisis to become more acute. And then the government of Germany decided to take control of those companies. In Poland, the Polish government took control over Gazprom's share in the operator of a pipeline that goes across Russia, Belarus, Poland into Germany. And so Gazprom has lost control over some of the companies, which served not only as a weapon, as I am demonstrating, but also as an instrument of corruption. Well, basically, some of those companies received the gas from Russia at ridiculous prices. Some of them received it without paying the export tax in Russia, which is 30% for natural gas. And then they resold it with profit to European consumers. And the proceedings remain somewhere in Swiss bank accounts. That's pure corruption. And I think that some of those companies still survive in Europe and will continue their activities.
In conclusion, I'd like to ask you, I like to ask my wise guest for advice. Seems like a reasonable thing to do, but I don't want, in case, who knows where we're being watched, let's not give advice to Kremlin. They've got their own people who can give them advice. But all too often, Russians will look at the West and say they have no idea how Russia works. They don't understand Russia. Well, here we are. You're from Russia. You can give, advice and feedback of somebody who understands Russia so well as anybody, as far as I'm concerned. What advice, suggestions, things to think about would you offer to, let's say, the White House or Washington, D.C., or even Americans, how to look at this situation where we have the gas station that is at war? What should be done to contain, to stop, to make things better?
Well, that's somewhat a sensitive issue. First, I cannot give recommendations to act against the country which, the citizenship of which I still maintain. And second, I can tell you a short story. Several years ago, prominent economists of Russia established something which was called an economic club. I participated in some of the sessions, then it was dissolved at one of the sessions, they started discussing very interesting issues. Absolutely, a lot of useful information came from the speakers. And then after 40 minutes of listening, I got tired. I raised my hand and said, please tell me, what are we doing? I am in the consulting business. When I hear a lot of useful information, I am switching on my analytical abilities, and I am going to maybe to make an outlook of several scenarios, how things are going to develop in the future. Then I will compare those scenarios, their probability, and then, as I'm in the consulting business, I'm going to recommend some way of behavior to the people who pay me for that. And the chairman of the session said a very interesting thing. He said, we talked to the presidential administration, and they told us, please analyze anything you want, do any type of analytical jobs, but we do not want your recommendations, and we do not want to know that you have any recommendations for us. I heard about the same declaration from prominent political analysts in Russia, not only economists. And so when you are dealing with Russia, you are not dealing with the decision makers which base their modus operandi on experts' opinion. You are dealing with a madman. It is not possible to predict how Mr. Putin is going to behave. Absolutely. It is not logic. It is not scenarios or something. It's just like, as the war shows, he's absolutely crazy, unpredictable. Sorry to say that.
Well, and that is an important piece of information as far as I'm concerned. Mikhail Krutikhin, thank you so much for your time and expertise. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much. You're listening and watching Rashkin Report. My name is Yuri Rashkin. My guest today was a Russian energy specialist, one of the leading analysts, Mikhail Krutikhin. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and we'll continue to bring you quality information about what is going on in Russia and how it is impacting the rest of the world. Thanks and take care.
Thank you and take care.